Recording. Hi, and welcome back to the Listening to Black Women's web series. I'm your host, Shayla Brown, and I have with me Tayler Tayler Clem. I will let her introduce herself and tell us about herself, why she wants to share her birth story, and what her connection is to birth work.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Shayla, for having me. My name is Tayler Clem, like you said. I am a healer, naturalist, lover of all things natural. I'm also a mother of three little ones under 4. And I feel compelled to share my story because it was, something that really transformed my life and just my life, not just in birth work, but just all around, just my understanding of just my ancestral wisdom and knowledge, things like that. So I'm passionate about birth work because it's natural and because it's something our ancestors did since the beginning of time. And this is where I feel I've been led to. I've been looking back at things and how things have set up into my life. Everything happens for a reason. And I believe I've been so divinely chosen to do this work and to use my voice to allow others to do it as well.
Okay, thank you for that. So you had 3 birth stories. You say you have 3 babies, so you have 3 birth stories. Were they all the same? And what do you think is significant about each one? And what's significant about sharing the story of each one?
Okay, yeah. So each one was not the same. Each one was different and very beautiful in its own way, very special, very, very transforming. Would you like me to just share each story or just kind of just?
Well, I guess just generally at this point, yeah, sure. You can share each story, but I was more so asking, you kind of touched on this, like why you want to share each story, like just a summary of maybe what you got from each birth and why you feel like it's important to tell the story. And then we can get into the details of each story.
Okay, wonderful. So I had a very significant experience into birth just with my first son. There was a lot of fear. I think I'm 28 now, so he's 4.5. So that was about when I was 24. And there was just a lot of fear around birth and having birth at home. And I knew immediately when I was pregnant that I wanted to give birth at home. I don't know what led me to that. It wasn't something that I was raised on or I knew of even, but it felt right. So I immediately just started informing myself, doing anything I can to find knowledge on, natural home birth and eliminating all the fear. There was so much, like everyone I spoke to or talked to, they would just hit me with their concerns or what experiences they went through that did or did not work for them. And it was if I wasn't able to equip myself with the information, I really could have, went a totally different way. But the fear was strong during my first pregnancy and birth. Excuse me. And then the second one was not a little bit like people are still like, you're still doing that? You're still going to go ahead and do that? Even my grandmother, which, she was happy that everything was well and she was thankful, but she still was like, you're going to do it again? So, the same situation, but even more beautiful, different home, but same beautiful experience, same beautiful people around. And for my third birth, what made it significant was I didn't have a birth team. So for my first 2, I had a birth team. And for my last baby, my baby girl, she was born just with me, my partner, and my little ones at home. And it was the most beautiful experience. I wouldn't changed it for the world. And it was really me just really eliminating all fear, really trusting in myself, and honestly, I felt that way from the very beginning with my first birth, but because I didn't have that experience, because people were still in my head, I wasn't really able to do it. But this time around, and don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed my birth team and I love people around me. And I believe that's how it should, be. That's how it is, how we've done it since the beginning of time. Women were always around helping out. But I do believe that when you're alone, you're really able to do beautiful, amazing things. So that's just like a quick summary of my experiences.
Okay. And you mentioned your grandmother. What were births like in your family? Were these narratives and these fears, were they coming mostly from family members, or was it just your immediate community? And then what have most births been like in your family, as far as you know?
Yeah. So that's one thing I really do want to continue to ask my folks who are still living, because I'm not quite sure, but I know that they were all hospital births. Like my grandmother said she was in the hospital. My mother, my mother's mother, my father's mother, they gave birth in the hospital. My sister gave birth in the hospital. My cousins, aunts, it was all hospital births, all drugged or epidurals or things like that. My mom, not so much. She tells us how we really just popped out. So it's just, she went there and it seems like the baby just came right away. So yeah, but those were, the experiences. The experience was you go to the hospital, you give birth. And the first experience with my sister, when she gave birth, her daughter, my niece is 7 years old. So 3 years before I did. And when she gave birth, it was not a good experience. And the fact that she, she experienced trauma. Let me just say that. And I just felt like there has to be a different way. There has to be something different. But yeah, outside of that, those were only the real experiences. My cousin, I remember her, she was really, out of it. She had, I think, multiple C-sections in her experience. And when visiting her after the baby, I felt like I was kind of like violating her space, and I wanted to help and I feel like I couldn't. But outside of that, I don't really have any birth experience in my family. I didn't really grow up around too many young babies or my aunts. I was kind of one of the youngest ones, so we didn't really have any younger cousins. We did have a few, but I just really wasn't experiencing birth or, pregnancy, I just didn't do it. I just didn't experience it.
Yeah. Okay. So from what you know, how is your narrative different, and how has your narrative added something to that void that it seems like is birth in your family, or has it?
Oh, I love that question. So I believe it helped a lot because, you have your uncles and your aunties saying, you're a warrior and I'm so proud of you. And, I couldn't believe you did it. And, even still after the third baby, they're still like, you're crazy, but you did it. You said you do it, so you do it. My dad, he's really amazing. It really changed the game, to be honest. And I don't really think about that much, that impact that I have within my family, but it's really nice to see. Or even my little cousin, she had asked me to, for some information for her birth experience. So, passed on some of the books I had and gave her some information. And, so it's really nice to see folks, or see my family really you act on some of the seeds that I planted, whether it's just some congratulations after they were, scared and convincing me not to do it, at least saying that, you did it and I'm proud of you, so it's real big. Yeah, it's really beautiful to see my cousins and my friends hit me up, saying, I want to do it like you. Just tell me, what should I do? So I definitely see the impact within my community, how my births changed their lives.
Okay, that's beautiful. And that's got to be a great feeling.
Yeah.
Um, so tell us about the birth. Give us the high points, the low points, the powerful points, the learning points. Just tell us about your birth.
Okay. I'm going to take a sip
Okay.
really fast. And I'm sorry if you could hear my little one down here.
Oh,
But
it's fine. I have 5. So,
so yeah, so my births, they just make me smile. I really am so grateful for the experiences I have, the partner I have, the family I have. For my first birth, I was living in my parents' house. And the pregnancy, the pregnancy was significant in itself. When I found out, well, let me actually just say, because I think this is important for folks to hear too. Before I got pregnant with my firstborn son, I was pregnant 3 times prior, but I got abortions for all 3 of those babies. And I just say that to say, because the environment matters so much, who you're around and what you're thinking and what you're consuming, because I thought that, bringing a baby into this world, it wasn't the right time, or what will my parents think? I didn't have enough money, and it's just all of these things. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The babies are going to come, and they're going to be supported, and they're going to be well loved. And, even when I was pregnant with my son, I didn't tell my family until like 4 months in. And for the same reasons, just, I didn't, what were they going to say? How are they going to feel? I don't have enough money, all these things still in my head. But, that time around, I'm like, I'm not going to keep doing this again. So when I told my family 4 months in, they were thrilled. My life changed. I felt so supported. I wasn't depressed as much. So, really tap into your support system. It's so important, and it helped me so much. So, as soon as I found out I was pregnant, something told me to start looking into home birth. I don't know what it was. I still think back to it to this day, but I started immediately looking into videos, home birth videos on YouTube. I went to the library, got tons of books. Even this is how powerful the universe is. Even those little free library books that you see on the street, I found the most amazing pregnancy book in it for free, brand new. I'm like, how did this, right on time when I'm looking, it's just right there. So, but I just really informed myself. I started joining these groups. There was a breastfeeding group I joined, a Black breastfeeding circle group at that right here in my city that I joined. At 4 months pregnant, I was in the classes and, supported around beautiful women that looked like me doing the same thing. So, I really just became informed. And that really was my foundation. It allowed me to eliminate all the fear, all the naysayers. So my first prenatal care appointment was at 4 months as well. And it was at the hospital. And when I went there, I just it did not feel good. It did not feel good. I told her how I felt about birth and what I planned to do with my home birth. And she just gave me all this sassiness and just fear. And I'm like, okay, and I went by myself too, which I don't think any woman should do. And it's unfortunate, but it's just, sometimes we're not in the right mind. We can't think of what we want to say. It's really helpful to have someone there to support you if you don't really know your provider or trust them or whatever it may be. But So that was the last time I went there. I didn't go back to the prenatal care visit. And since then, and then I started my journey to look for like a midwife and a doula, and, you know, create my birth team. So I found a woman. Her name is Ola Obasi. She is an amazing, amazing, beautiful woman, based in Puerto Rico, herbalist, mother, doula. And she wasn't even living here, but I felt compelled to find her and to have her on my team. So fortunately, she's a traveling doula, so she was able to join my team, and I found her. And I was adamant. I forgot to say this. I was adamant on having a Black birth team. I don't know why, but that's what I wanted, and that's what I was determined to have. You know, and it was hard. I live in a city where there's no practicing. I believe there is one now, but no practicing midwives that do home birth. You know, we do have a few that do the midwife center or at the hospital, but none at the home birth. And I was not going anywhere but home. So and it was so hard to find a midwife. And even after I found, like, you know, I'm hitting up my community members, the people who may know, and even like 6 months and I still couldn't find someone. Even after speaking with someone who I thought was going to be my, you know, my final person that I had to ask and they can connect me to, you know, and once this part really sticks with me because she told me, and this was the person that I knew was going to help me. She was like, girl, just give birth at the hospital. You know, this is your first birth, first births. Don't give birth at home. Just go ahead and create your safe space within the hospital. And I'm like, you know, thank you, but no, thank you. And a few days later after that, I was able to connect with my midwife. And she was, of course, she looked like me, and from there on out, she did my prenatal care. It was such a transformational experience for her to come into my home, you know, ask me like about my diet and, you know, how I've been feeling lately, you know, real genuine questions. She made me feel valued. You know, she listened to the baby without the fetal Doppler, which I didn't want. Just, you know, from my understanding, the babies don't like it. So why do something the babies don't like? So she had a fetoscope, a stethoscope, or whatever. You could hear the baby's heartbeat, and she would put it on my belly. It was just the most beautiful experience. And sometimes we had our prenatal appointments in the sun on the porch. You know, it was great. And 6 months later, we had our baby right there in my parents' living room. My mom, like, everyone's just stepped in. They created this sacred space. And my mom, she just, you know, even though I was adamant in not having, like, you know, people there outside of my partner and my birth team, my mom's presence in and out, you know, helping out was just amazing. And I just am truly grateful for her and her spirit. But, you know, we had an amazing birth. The birth team, it was just a good vibe. It was good energy. My son was born on all four knees, or not all four, hands and knees. And he just came on out. You know, they immediately got in the bed, and he was immediately put on my chest and started breastfeeding right away. It was just beautiful, a beautiful experience. And for my second birth, I wanted the same thing. We moved into our own home at this point, and we were looking for the same birth team. We looked into the same same doula for this birth. Prenatal care. I knew I didn't want to go to a hospital, but unfortunately my midwife was not practicing anymore. So I had to go outside of my vision of a Black birth team. And I believe it was still because I was not yet confident in what I needed or what I wanted. And I still was trying to please other people's mindset. And I'm sorry, but I would like to go back a little bit. I think it's so important in your partner. And he's like, they're the only person that you really need to talk to and have on board. And even if they're not on board, just letting them know that you've eliminated all fear, and you are well equipped to birth your baby the way you want, in peace, and, whatever sacred space you want to create. Making sure your partner is on board and not projecting their fear onto you is so important. I have an amazing partner in life. Like, he's just amazing, really. And just each birth experience with him, it's funny listening to him tell the stories, but each experience was just amazing. Like, he just naturally knew what to do. And in each birth, it just got better and better. But since day one, he always believed in me. He wasn't quite on board. He didn't think it was the best thing to do, but he believed in me and he trusted me. And, even with my father, saying to him, like, you don't want this to happen, do you? Or he'll say in his ear, like, or he'll tell me, he'll say, he doesn't want you to give birth at home. So, like, it's like, how do you know that? And I'll go ask my partner, like, is that true? Like, he'll say, no, like, I'm ready. We're ready. So people will really project their fear, to any and everyone around you, but making sure that you have a good, solid team, and especially within your partner, is so important and crucial. But yes, for my second birth, prenatal care was good. My midwife, they were okay. And, that vibe wasn't really there, because I think in my mind, I wanted something that wasn't really, well, let me just say this. The people in your birth space is so important. It's so important. And I say that because, the way you feel, the way you vibe with people or vibing with yourself, it matters, because it could delay the process, your birthing experience. It can make it painful if that's something you experience. It can be, the people matter, the smells, what you're listening to, like the music, those things matter. So especially the energies that you have in your space. And I believe that for my midwife, for my second birth, wasn't the energy that I wanted. And looking back, I think that it did have an effect on how I labored and how I birthed. However, it was still a beautiful experience, and once I was really able to tune out of everything, I was in a shower when I gave birth, but in my bathroom, it was so small, not too many people was able to fit, including my midwife. So I think being in that safe space, or that, quiet space, and I was really able to be in tune with myself, I was able to finally give birth. So my labor wasn't, I felt like it was kind of harder than my first birth, at least. I was ready for this baby to come. And like I said, as soon as I was able to really release and tune everything out and be by myself in this little shower, on my hands and knees again, with the water hitting my back, and that water makes you feel so good. I was scared to come out of the shower because it felt so good. And it's the only thing that made me feel good at that moment. But I was finally able to have my baby boy. He was my second baby boy, and I was able to catch him, and I was adamant about knowing he was a boy first, because with my first son, someone else said it, I'm not sure who. And I wanted to be able to catch him myself, which I did, and check him out. And I was just extremely grateful for that experience. But it really taught me to just tune out and to really tune into myself, and then everything will be okay. And that's when I was really able to release. And I had a tear for my first birth, like a small tear. It healed really fast. And for my second birth, I was able to really just feel when his head was emerging. And if I was pushing too hard, I started to push too hard, but being in tune with myself, I was able to close back allow myself to just breathe him open, or breathe myself open almost, and just really just, let things flow naturally and come out naturally. Because when you're like pushing, or you're tense, you're tightened up, it really affects things. So I was really able to tune in with how he was coming out, and I didn't tear for my second birth. And I really think I was able to do that because I was just in tune with what was going on and understood things now. This was my second experience. I was able to know how it worked. So really tuning in with my body resonated with me for my second birth. And now for first birth, the healing afterwards were just, it was a great, amazing support system. My partner, my family, my mother, my doula, my midwife coming back, the midwife coming to you instead of you going out to doctor's appointments. It really changes things, and it just felt really good. Now for my third birth, my sweet baby girl, man, my sweet girl, she really transformed my life. So she's, what is she, about 6 months now? And for this baby, I believe, I still tried to look for a midwife a little bit. Well, actually, no, I still reached out to my doula, and I asked her if she'll attend my birth without a midwife, because I knew I didn't want the same midwife as my second birth. But I did know that I wanted her there because her presence was, extremely valuable, and just, her presence in my life was valuable. But for my birth, her presence immediately, when she came in on my second birth, like the energy just changed, and she just things felt right. But because of the laws and things, you're not allowed to practice or you're not allowed to attend a birth as a doula without a midwife at home in my state. So I asked her, but I wasn't, I told her, I know that this is a law, so I really didn't press her on it. If she didn't feel comfortable, because if something goes wrong, they're liable, basically, is why that is a law. So I say that to say, because of that, because she wasn't able to attend, because there was still no Black midwives in my city, I was like, I'm gonna just do it myself. And, I feel confident this time. It's not like I still, every birth, still reading, still watching, YouTube videos. I'm still, connecting to like-minded women and individuals. I'm still learning, I never stop learning. I got more books. I got like 5 more books this time around, emergency handbook, more unassisted childbirth books, which were really did wonders for me, and my confidence in eliminating the fear. And just, my partner, making sure he's on board, and, he was, and he's still my dad, and my other perks are still in his ear and my ear, and, my dad even told me, he said, when I told him I was doing the unassisted birth, he told me, please don't tell that to anybody else, especially his mother, my grandmother, don't tell that to anyone, because you're crazy, basically, So I'm like, cool, I won't tell them. They still knew I was giving birth at home, but the fact that it was unassisted just gave this level, you're really crazy at this point. So, but it didn't stop me, I didn't allow any fear to enter into my presence, my body or anything. And so I prepared myself. Well, I like to say that you could do as much preparing as possible, but your baby, your body knows how to give birth, when to give birth, so for prenatal care, I did prenatal care with my doctor's office. I went to maybe 2-3 appointments. And I just felt like at some point after I got the blood work and after I got the essentials, I just felt like it didn't benefit me anyway. They're just, I know that I'm well. I know when I'm not well. So I know if I need help, I'll need help. But I trusted my body. I trusted what I was doing to nourish my body. And I felt like I didn't need anyone to monitor me or check up on me. And especially when those folks are kind of just like, kind of looking down on you, questioning your knowledge, not, and it's almost like I didn't want to share too, because I didn't want anyone frowning at me or trying to give me their fear, basically. So, I ended up eventually just stopped going altogether to the prenatal cares. I don't get sonograms or the heart. I don't do any of those during my pregnancy. So I really didn't feel the need to continue to go. I don't need to know my weight or anything like that. Those numbers really affect. And I like to say that too. Looking back, the one thing I did not participate in is like, when you're in labor, the centimeter checks, or when the cervix checks, I did for my first birth when I was 6 centimeters. And it messed me up because I'm like, oh, I'm ready to give birth. I thought I was far along, but when she checked me and I was only 6 centimeters, I'm like, oh, I was disappointed in a way, and it really affects your mindset. So since that, and I was in my first birth, I didn't do that for my second birth or my third birth. I just didn't feel the need to know these numbers and things. And a beautiful thing along that point, I was due mid-August, and my baby girl came mid-July, or more so. So she came 3 weeks earlier than the expected due date. And I say that to say that all of these numbers and things, they're helpful in a way, but at the same time, they give us these expectations and these, I still have time to do this and that. And it's just like, no, your baby comes when you want. These are nice guidelines to have, and, but at the end of the day, things happen naturally, and we have to let go of all of these things that are in place that, are helpful sometimes, but at other times they just give us these unrealistic expectations of how things are supposed to go. So when she was 3 weeks early, I like to share this particular labor experience, but I didn't go to sleep the night prior. I think we were just up watching a movie. All the kids were in a bed with us. And I just didn't go to sleep. I don't know why, and then eventually my son wakes up with me and we're just playing in bed. He's my 2-year-old. So we're just, playing and just laughing and smiling. He just wakes up cracking up. I'm just like, why are you up in the middle of the night? It's like 4 a.m. And then eventually he falls asleep, but I can't fall asleep. And not any particular reason. I just don't know why I'm not falling asleep. But then I start feeling cramping. And I'm like, okay, what is going on? So eventually, maybe an hour in, I'm like, all right, this seems like, more than just a little tightening, like something's going on. So I have to get on my hands and knees to work through some of this cramping. And that's something that I did with my prior pregnancies too, that helped. But I'm still in bed and I'm trying to go to sleep at this point. But, so I'm trying to work through it, moving my body, rocking through in this cramping. And I'm still considering it cramping. I'm not considering it contractions or anything like that, because she's not coming, and I didn't know what she was, but she's a she. But she's not coming because it's not August 9th. It's not her due date. So I'm just like, what is going on? So I'm still doing that. And eventually I'm tapping my partner. I'm like, hey, I think something's going on. I'm still not calling it labor because I'm still just in disbelief almost. And he just rolls over and goes back to sleep. He's not paying me any attention. And I eventually am like, okay, let me go take a shower. So I take a shower and I'm still kind of moving out, but then I got out because it just didn't feel right. And I go back to the bed. I'm still doing the hands and knees, trying to fall asleep, and it's just not working. And this goes on for 4 hours. And within that fourth hour, I'm back in the shower at this point and on my hands and knees, trying to get some relief because I still believe I'm in disbelief. And this is the transformational moment that just changed my life forever. When I was finally able to release and say, like, I'm talking to myself at this point. I'm like, I got this, Tayler, I don't even know. I wish I remember the exact words, but it just felt like a just out of my body moment type of situation where I'm just like, I got this, I'm speaking positive words into to myself. I'm saying, this is it. This is it. Like, this baby is coming. I'm telling myself that this baby is coming. I'm finally letting go of the fact that she's not due. So, she's coming now, basically. And in like literally like a minute later, after I start talking to myself, she came, and a couple hours before, so at this point it's like, or about 7:00. So she came about 8:00, and this all started about 4:00 in the morning, because I remember looking at the time. But about 6 in the morning, after, tapping on my partner about 3-4 times, he finally wakes up, and he's starting to move, starting to get things cleaned up and stuff. Like, he just hops into it without me even saying anything. And that's what I tell you, man, your partner support is so crucial, but just his, just getting the kids ready, he takes over on everything, getting the bed made up, and it was just beautiful what he did. But when the baby came at 8, he called all the family and stuff. And I was adamant for each birth that I didn't want family there, but they could be, in the home. So they were all downstairs at around 8 in the morning. They're quiet too, because I was, I really wanted to make sure that my spaces were always quiet, music playing, dim lights, everything felt good. Everything felt safe. But yeah, so when she came, I was able to catch her. I saw that she was a baby girl, and these baby girls, man, this baby girl, she changed my life. She's just so sweet. I never knew I needed her until I had her. But yeah, so I mean, that really sums it up. That her being able to really talk to myself and allow myself to get rid of this expectation that she's not coming and that she's not ready yet, allowed me to just give birth and joy too. I didn't have any painful experience. It was kind of, uncomfortable moments, but no painful moments. None where I couldn't work through with a little bit of movement. Movement does your body so good. And nothing that really didn't feel good when I put hot water on my back. That shower changed the game for me too. The whole experience was just so beautiful. And then 4 hours from start to finish, it was just so beautiful. I'm so grateful for her and this experience, and just the fearlessness and the confidence that I gained through it, and it changed my life forever. So yeah, that was my 3 birth experiences summed up in a nutshell.
Well, Tayler, thank you for sharing all of that, sharing your vulnerabilities, sharing your tactics, sharing your processes, your thought processes, and everything. And we're coming up on time, so I'm not going to hold you any longer. I also want to leave space for viewers to ask questions. I have some questions that I think I can follow up and ask, but I think I'm going to leave some space for viewers to come in the comments, ask you questions, and just kind of engage with you. So if you can tell us if you're active on social media at all, they can also reach out to you that way. So, what are your handles on the interwebs, if you have any?
Yes, thank you. So I can be followed on Instagram. I'm at Dawa, DAWA _ mama, Dawa _